Hello, we are the Youth Advisory Board. Located in Ballarat, the YAB is a collective group of young people who are all passionate about improving outcomes for young people in our community through leadership and advocacy. In early 2021, the YAB was given a chance to collaborate with DWELP in creating a project to raise awareness on how climate change is affecting young people today. We reached out to local youth groups and were able to virtually interview 5 diverse young people. Here's what they had to say. How do you feel about climate change adaptation?
I think climate change is a really big problem in the world. As yes, countries are doing things about it, but I think there could be more done to improve.
I know that it's a problem and I want to help to raise awareness of it. I am grateful that people are trying to do things that help the issue, and I believe that we need to do more.
It's not that new of a thing. It's been around for a while, and the effects have been felt really strongly in the last couple of years. You always see those stats about like X amount of years in the last 20 has been like the hottest on record. It feels frustrating when action isn't taken, when there are steps which have been proven to be effective in mitigating the effects of climate change and even reversing it to some extent. A lot of people have a lot of different views on climate change. Some people's way of action is through chaining themselves to train tracks and things and protests in cities, and that is one way of gaining attention, but I don't really feel that that's the right way to go about it. It's not very productive.
I feel like it is something that is an issue, and it is something that should be combated on a higher level, and by higher level I mean government level, but it is being done to some extent, but not enough.
Climate change sucks. I'm very terrified. Like, adapting to climate change, trying to respond, yeah, let's please try our best. Let's please do some things. Listen to the climate experts who everyone seems to be really good at ignoring. Please, let's stop ignoring them.
As mentioned, climate change isn't a new concept. In 1988, the United States officially declared climate change as a national issue. It has been an active issue affecting us all, firsthand, for many years, whether emotionally, physically, or mentally. It's safe to say, climate change can be a very confronting and heavy topic for most to face. How does climate change impact you today?
Climate change impacts me, as it might impact my future, as well as everyday life now. For example, I find that temperatures are getting hotter and hotter each year, or even colder and colder in the winter.
I don't think that climate change impacts me personally, but I do think that it affects the youth of today. I believe that it's important for us to stand up for what we believe in and say that we need change immediately, because otherwise our world will be gone.
When thinking about how climate change impacts me, I immediately think of the people that I know and the thought of them being negatively impacted by the effects of climate change. Thinking of my family and my loved ones who live in rural areas that don't have access to flood-safe housing, or don't have access to housing that would keep them safe from extreme weathers, or even basic healthcare.
2 big things come to mind here. The first is last summer when those bushfires that were just like so terrible were happening. I don't live near them. I didn't live particularly near them, and I'm sure it was absolutely horrifying for everyone who did. But like I live in a relatively city area, and we weren't particularly close to those fires, and we could see smoke. And a lot of people were coughing because there was just so much smoke in the air, and that was quite intense and real. Although again, very blessed that I wasn't actually near the fires and didn't have to deal with the impact the way a lot of people did. The other thing is that I think it's just hard to not have a little bit of existential dread being aware of climate change in the state of the world. Like, I don't feel like I can just ignore that, and it doesn't exactly bode well for anything in general. So, oh no, I guess. I'm not sure how I'm meant to deal with that.
A noticeable effect caused by climate change is the ever-changing weather temperatures. Here shows a graph of Melbourne's hottest summer days across 2015 to 2020. with temperatures ranging from 38 all the way up to 46. It is expected that by 2050, the annual temperatures will be increased by 2.4 degrees Celsius. A change like this is likely to double the amount of hot days per year, ultimately resulting in a longer, drier bushfire season. How does climate change impact your future?
I think this will impact my future, as I'm not sure what it'll be. Not my future, well, my future probably, actually. I think it will impact my future as it might impact, like, temperatures. Temperatures might get really, really hot later on. Also, bushfires or extreme weather, I think might happen more in my lifetime. But I think my kids' lifetime, if I have kids, they would definitely see the changes in climate change.
As I've said before, it doesn't really affect my future personally. I am currently part of the youth of the world, and if we don't do something about this very soon, our world is going to be ruined. There will be no more places such as the Great Barrier Reef and no animals such as koalas because they'll all be dead because of climate change. It's our problem and we have to try and fix it.
It impacts my future in a lot of ways. Climate change can affect what resources are available to Australia, which would shape the workforce and what can be produced. Also, the loss of wildlife, making climate change, it makes the world an unsafer place. It causes rare weather events with more intensity and greater frequency. It can destroy resources.
When thinking about how this impacts my future, I think of the possibility of not being able to grow up in a world, or not having our future generations grow up in a world where they have access to clean water, to pollution-free air. Just the thought of not being able to have a future where you have access to things like these that we are also used to having access to, it's scary. And I think that this would affect my future as well, because the thought of having a future where you don't have where you're basically subjected to the effects of climate change on a daily basis is fearful to me, and it scares me.
Do I have one? Is the question. I think a lot of people in my generation kind of feel that way, like, climate change, huh? When's it gonna get us? Like, not if, when. Like, how much of a life do I get before climate change dooms us all? I don't know what to say about that. Like, climate change impacts everyone, so, like, it obviously impacts me personally, but, like, no one's exactly getting away scot-free if we continue to go the way we have been.
Are you fearful of the future because of climate change?
I definitely am a bit scared because I'm not sure what is to come. Like, if it's going to be, my lifetime, or if it's going to be my kids or their kids. I'm not 100% sure. So I think definitely I am a bit scared because I'm not sure what it's going to turn out to be. But I definitely know that there's going to be some changes with weather and like maybe some severe bushfires or even colder climates. So that's, definitely one thing I'm fearful for.
I would say that I am. We don't know what will happen to our planet in the future, and I think that everyone has the right to be afraid of what's coming.
That's a pretty deep question. I'm only 15. I've got a fair bit of future in front of me to think about. I'm not yet fearful of the future because it's not too late for action to mitigate its negative effects. But at some point it will start to become late in the game. A lot of countries around the world, thankfully, have taken steps such as the Paris Agreement, things like that, to help reduce their negative impacts and footprints on the environment. But Australia hasn't really. We've been falling behind. We're also up there among the largest producers of a form of waste per capita. And although we've only got approximately 27 million people, which is far less than some countries, we are actually one of the most per capita. So I'm not fearful of the future yet, but at some point it will become too late.
Yeah, I am. because I am scared not only for myself but the future generations as well. And I am scared that one day it's going to be too late and we're not going to be able to do anything about it, about climate change.
Absolutely. Climate change is terrible and it's super serious and very much impending. Like, you only have to listen to like any climate expert, any scientist talking about these things to know how serious it is. How could you not be fearful for the future in a situation like that? I'm 18. What future?
Aside from temperature changes, many young people are concerned about the well-being of our wildlife. Already, we are seeing an increase in threatened wildlife due to the impact of climate change. Animals such as bees, polar bears, and even giraffes are experiencing habitat abnormalities, causing a significant population decline. All three animals are currently on the extinction watch list, along with many others. Do you think others share your views?
I think others do share my opinions as well. Definitely younger generations. Older generations, yes, they definitely do have them. But I think the younger generation especially does definitely share those opinions in climate change.
Absolutely. There are many individuals such as Greta Thunberg who are campaigning for change. However, we need to have more people putting their voices out there to be heard.
That's interesting. Yes, I do. Especially youth. A lot of youth see it as an issue because it is. It ultimately will be our problem. It already is, but it will become more so when we are the generation that's being leaders and taking care of things. I don't think there's too many people that are just saying, no, let's just let it go, let's continue in these unsustainable practices. There are some, no doubt, including those in power at the moment, but a lot of people do share these views that something has to change. It doesn't have to be sweeping reforms immediately, but it's not too late to start making steps towards it. And it's not that difficult either. Just certain guidelines in place that can really help encourage the use of renewable energy resources. The short answer to do you think others share your views? Yes, I do.
I think it depends on what demographic you look at. If you think of youth, I think there is an amount of people who do take climate change seriously. But there's also a vast majority of people who either don't believe in it or don't want to believe in it, solely for the fact that it would make them question the way they treat our Earth.
Some yes, others no. I guess that's true about everything. That's not a very helpful answer. I think a lot of the people like I've spoken to have, but I would have no idea how to judge for the wider population. Like, definitely a lot of my friends think in similar ways, but they're my friends, so.
While it's fairly common for people to surround themselves with like-minded friends, in this instance it's also important to acknowledge the impact influencers today have when using their platforms to educate youth. Activist influencers such as Greta Thunberg have quickly gained a large following on social media after expressing her knowledge and concerns surrounding climate change and what we can do to prevent it from worsening. What can we do to all work together?
I think definitely one thing we can do to improve it is actually go zero or green energy, definitely. So things like solar panels, wind, hydro, or even the matter of just catch a bus to work instead of driving a car.
I think we can work together by talking about climate change and slowly making milestones for certain things, such as no greenhouse emissions by 2050.
I think it's a little bit of what I said earlier about how we can all work together. Campaigning, things like these which are going on, can often help produce, grassroots political action, that sort of thing. The government will take notice of voters' opinions. The problem is that a lot of the people with these opinions are teenagers who cannot vote yet. But by the next federal election, I believe I will be able to vote, and so will a lot of my peer group. So the way we all work together is continuing to bring attention to these issues. There are solutions available to us. We just need to be able to encourage the government to enforce them. And if we have to use the power that all voting Australians have in their vote, then that is just what will have to happen. The government will respond to that because they want to stay as the government and not become the opposition. And it's not that much to ask for, protecting where we all live. That's not an unreasonable request. So I think that's how we can all work together to start making some steps towards not fixing climate change, but reducing its negative effects.
I think society today is very judgy, to say the least. And for all of us to come together would be a hard thing. But I also believe that if our youth, let's say our youth were to come together and fight against climate change, I think it would be extremely powerful and extremely benefiting, because it's our future that's being impacted at the end of the day. And if we are all to come together and do something about it, it would be amazing.
People don't seem to want to very much. I think people get a bit of a attitude about like, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? And then they do nothing, which is literally the worst thing. But if people are willing to put in like even a little bit of effort, if we all just put in like a little bit of effort to try and do like some things and have these conversations, I think that is really important.
While the average person is unable to immediately stop all fossil fuel burning or reconfigure the entire agricultural system, we are still able to work together as a community in fighting climate change. If everybody stepped in and started making small changes to their lifestyles, using their votes for good, and continued speaking up for what we believe in, we could dramatically begin changing the current attitude towards climate change. How do you think we can raise awareness about climate change?
I think we can do multiple things to raise awareness for this. For example, I think we could raise social media awareness, but also just doing regular things like education in schools and things like that.
The first point that I think of for raising awareness is education. Schools need to teach people on how climate change affects our society today, and we need to get the government officials talking about it.
When I was looking over these, I thought this was an interesting point. I would hopefully say that most people are aware of climate change as a factor. Whether they believe in all its effects and whether it's real or not is probably a bit of another matter. But I feel like a lot of people are aware of the existence of climate change. I think the real problem in Australia is actually taking action on that. The government has been particularly strong in its stance of not taking a lot of action towards it, and largely I presume that's because of the short-term negative economic impacts that switching to renewables on a large scale would have. There's Australia was devastated by bushfires just a few years back, and that's one of the results that we've been seeing as a result of increasing climate change. Earthquakes, another effect of climate change.
When thinking about how we can raise awareness against something like climate change, I immediately think of social media. Because in the past, it is something that has been harnessed to spread awareness about other things like the Black Lives Matter movement. So if we were to harness social media in that way, and I think it is already being done, but if we did it more and we pushed more on social media for raising awareness around climate change, I truly believe that that is our best way to get our youth engaged.
That's kind of a hard one, because I mean, what do you do to raise awareness about anything? You like talk about it with your friends and family. I think most people are like aware of climate change on the basic level, that it's a thing that's happening and it's kind of bad. But beyond that, they're not really sure. So I would recommend being a really annoying friend who's always sending your friends petitions and asking them to donate to places and telling them which politicians you're mad at currently for coal mines and stuff, or whatever else environmentally is going on, because I just don't think people have the specific information. Like, they know generally, but not like the more detailed things, I guess, is what I'm saying there.
Talk about it. Educate others. Continue fighting for what you believe in. The Climate Reality Project has compiled their top 3 tips on how to educate others on climate change. Emphasise what you have in common. Focus on the science, but don't be afraid to be humorous, and find the approach that works for you. If you're having difficulty bringing up climate change to a peer or family member, it is suggested to find a common ground topic, an interest you both share, that may start to see the effects of climate change unless prevented early. When having a serious or intimidating conversation with someone, it's common to add humour and lighten the mood. Whilst this is a good icebreaker moment, ensure that you are spreading correct information and understand the topics you're explaining. Finally, find out what works for you, knowing who you're communicating to and act accordingly. For some, raising awareness online for sharing informational posts is when living in such a technology-reliant time, we're granted access to live information worldwide. Learning the disasters caused by climate change on the other side of the world has never been easier. While social media is an easy way to share your opinions and knowledge with many people at once, some may prefer talk face-to-face about their personal experience and how they've dealt with it. Find what method of communication works for you will make talking about it come a lot easier. Thank you to all that participated in the making of this video, and thank you to Dwell for teaming up with us to make this happen.